In 2023, a service elevator in the basement of a condemned Chicago hotel was welded shut after a final malfunction. It opened to an empty shaft. No power, no mechanism. But this year, a maintenance worker disappeared during renovations, and the elevator opened again. Security footage shows he stepped in at 3:11 a.m. But when the doors opened, he was blind and muttering about Nixon, rotary phones, and a floor that was never built. We found his audio log, and if you're listening to this, I suggest you don't take the elevator. I was hired last month to help retrofit the Langford Hotel in downtown Chicago, a rotting, brick-faced tower that hadn't had a guest since 2009. The city wanted it converted into upscale condos. My job: go in, map the remaining electrical lines, seal up all outdated access points. Nothing glamorous. Just find the dead ends and lock them down. The Langford wasn't exactly in the best part of town, but something about the place felt heavier than just age. Locals didn't like talking about it. The old maintenance man we replaced warned us never to go near the sub-basement. He called it dead space. I thought he was just being dramatic. Old-timers love to pass on creepy stories before retirement. Supposedly, 2 guests vanished down there back in 2009, just before the hotel shut down. No remains were found, no foul play confirmed, just 2 missing persons reports and a sealed police file. I didn't believe in ghosts. I still don't. But I do believe in things people cover up. On my second week, I was assigned to inspect a welded door at the far end of the sub-basement. The steel was scorched, bolted shut with industrial weld lines. No signage, no lock. Just a rusted plate that once read, "Service Elevator, B2 Access." I looked through the building's blueprints. Nothing. No elevator shaft listed in that wing. No electrical feed. It shouldn't exist. But when I scanned the panel for residual power, my multimeter blinked. There was a current. Barely a trickle. Like something was idling deep inside. I peeled back a loose corner of metal and found a small, outdated control pad behind the wall. Dim green text blinked on the surface. Level null. Locked. That's not a standard designation. There's no 0 level, and certainly not a null symbol. I've worked vertical shafts for 20 years. This wasn't a glitch. Someone made that interface. I wasn't supposed to investigate further, but curiosity got the better of me. I started recording on my phone and unscrewed the panel to get a look inside. Behind the wires, tucked away in an old socket, was a brass keyhole. No key in sight. But when I turned back to my bag to look for tools, something changed. A sound. Click. I turned. The door was open. The welding seams were intact, still sealed, but the center of the door, once flat steel, now split like an automatic panel. Behind it, lit faintly by flickering bulbs, was a functioning elevator. It was spotless, vintage, looked like it hadn't aged a day since the 1970s. Brass rails, wood paneling, a faint hum in the walls. I took a step closer. Inside, the floor buttons glowed softly. 1, 2, 3, 13, 19. Floor null. And below it, a keycard slot I hadn't noticed before. Something buzzed. The doors whispered, "Ding," and the elevator invited me in. I should have turned around right then, called in the crew, logged it as a structural anomaly, and walked out. But I didn't. I stepped in. The floor was warm, not from heat, but from vibration. Something mechanical was alive in the walls, like a heartbeat under floorboards. The interior smelled like dust and perfume, the kind your grandmother wore, faintly sweet, unnaturally preserved. The panel inside didn't match the one outside. This one was older, the kind with push-in buttons that click solidly beneath your thumb. All were numbered like a regular hotel, until I saw it again. Floor Null. A brass circle with no label. It shouldn't have lit up, but it did, and it was pulsing. I pressed it. A hum rolled through the shaft. Slow. Heavy. Then the doors closed without a sound. The overhead lights dimmed slightly as the elevator began its descent. Except, it didn't feel like descending. My stomach didn't shift the way it should have. Instead, I felt a slow sideways tilt, like the whole building was leaning, recalibrating itself. Then, the lights blinked, just for a second. When they came back on, the interior had changed. The walls were no longer polished wood. They were lined with red felt wallpaper, slightly torn at the edges. The floor was cracked linoleum. The mirrors were fogged with age, and I was still moving. Finally, with a soft mechanical chime, the elevator stopped. Ding. The doors opened to a lobby. But it wasn't our lobby. It looked like a hotel reception from a completely different time. No LED lights, no card readers, just a rotary phone on the desk and a guest book with an inkwell pen. The air smelled of cigarette smoke and mildew. A faded newspaper on a table read, Chicago Tribune, May 17, 1971. My heart dropped. I walked forward into the lobby. Everything was real. The carpet was matted with footprints. A ceiling fan creaked slowly overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a radio was playing. Old jazz, full of static. I reached for my phone. No signal, no service. But it was still recording. I turned around. The elevator was still there, waiting. Doors open, lights dim. Then, a sound behind me. Footsteps. From the hallway to my right. Measured. Slow. Not sneaky, but purposeful. Like someone knew I was there. I ducked behind the desk, my breath caught. A man walked into the lobby, tall, pale, wearing a hotel uniform from another era, maroon with gold trim. His face was clean-shaven, but something was off. His eyes. There weren't any. Just smooth skin, no lids, no sockets, just blank, featureless skin, where eyes should be. He turned, as if scanning the room. Then he spoke. "You don't belong here." I froze. He shouldn't have been able to see me, but somehow he did. "You brought it back open," he said, voice hollow. "You opened Floor Null." And then, just like that, he vanished. No footsteps, no exit, gone. I ran back to the elevator. I didn't care about the signal anymore, about the mystery, about proof. I just needed out. The moment I stepped back inside, the doors shut on their own, and the Floor Null button flickered once, then went dark. None of the buttons worked. I slammed my fists on the panel, punched every number. Nothing. The light overhead buzzed violently. The mirrors began to fog. The hum in the walls grew louder and deeper, like a growl resonating through time itself. And then, the elevator started moving again, but not up, not down. It felt like drifting, not through space, through something else. The lights blinked off. Complete darkness. For 5, maybe 10 seconds, there was only the sound. That mechanical groan, distant and metallic. Then a sharp click. The lights returned, and everything was different again. The interior was now warped. The walls had melted slightly, sagging as if exposed to decades of heat. The carpet had turned gray. The mirrored panels were cracked and reflected nothing, just void. And the doors were open, but there was no lobby, no hallway, just blackness. Not darkness, blackness. As if the elevator had arrived in a place that wasn't finished yet, a gap between seconds, a wrinkle in architecture. I hesitated. Then I heard it. My own voice. Day 14. I've stopped trying the buttons. They don't respond anymore. I think time works differently here. It was my voice, but older, tired, desperate. Coming from a small handheld recorder, lying in the corner of the elevator. I had never recorded that. I picked it up, shaking. If you're hearing this, the only way out is to wait. Wait for the right timestamp. Look for it. 3:11 a.m. That's when it opens. But you only get one chance. I looked at my phone. 3:10:33 a.m. No signal, no network. But the clock was still ticking. I stood perfectly still. 30 seconds passed. The elevator began to hum again. Then, at exactly 3:11 a.m., the panel flickered to life. A single button illuminated in red, return. I didn't hesitate. I pressed it. This time, the sensation wasn't drifting. It was tearing. The whole frame of the elevator groaned, like it was being pulled apart. The lights burst and sparked. The mirrors shattered inward. I screamed, and then silence. The doors slid open. I staggered out into the modern lobby. Same lighting, same wall textures. Emergency crew waiting with flashlights and thermal scanners. They found me collapsed near the old service elevator. That same one, now sealed with steel plating, welded shut decades ago. They asked where I'd been. I was gone for 11 minutes. But my phone had 3 hours of audio. The last entry was corrupted, except for one phrase at the end, barely audible. In transit, payment pending. I tried to leave the next day, but the elevator called me again. Its hum vibrates through the walls at night, and sometimes, at 3:11 a.m., I still hear the chime. Ding.